A peaceful start to the day ends in tragedy.
I have heard about a whole lot of hate that's being directed at our trans community.
No, sir, you will not shift the focus from those children.
It was really scary, and I just ran under the pew, and then I covered my head. My friend, saved me, though, because he laid on top of me, but he got hit. He went to the hospital.
To the trans community, nobody needs that, nobody wants that, and I don't know why you thought that would be a good idea right now.
Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity.
I think you lost your sense of common humanity in trying to shift this into a trans issue when really you were saying at the beginning that this was about the children, and that's who we should be worried about.
These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Yes, you're right. These children should be able to learn and pray without having to be worried about getting shot up by some overly juiced trans person that's taking cross-sex hormones at the peak of when their natural hormones are also kicking in. And instead of being able to talk about that, we refer to that as villainizing. So if you want to talk about trans, I'll definitely talk about trans, but you're not going to like what you hear, so let's get into it.
We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone.
What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, so I'm probably not going to do a lot of editing on this one because I am 100% bothered about the way this whole situation has gone down. In case you haven't heard, there was another mass shooting by another trans person. I'm going to be clear about that because that's becoming a common theme. While everybody in the press loves to blame white men and say it's always white supremacy,
it's always a young white male. Almost always. I mean, did anyone this morning think, I wonder if that was a female?
Okay, then why is it when a white man changes his name from Robert to Robin?
The Minneapolis shooter has been identified as a 23-year-old Robin Westman. According to court docs, at 17 years old, Robert Westman formerly had his legal name changed to Robin because docs state the minor child identifies as female and wants her name to reflect the identification. The application for the name change of a minor was filed by the mother, and a court granted the request in 2020.
We're all supposed to treat that differently, and suddenly their narrative shifts. And here's the deal. I don't think that we should be blaming any particular gender or race when it comes to these kinds of things. I think what we should be trying to do is trying to figure out why this is happening and making it stop. I think that that's what should be the most important thing. And I don't think it's fair to turn it into hate when people actually want to get to the bottom of why these things are happening. And I understand why some people think it's really pressing that we get to the bottom of these things sooner than later because people are actually losing their lives because of it. And so it is something that we do need to, on some level, get some sort of understanding of and some sort of grasp of. And I also know that between Tim Walz and apparently Jacob Frey, the Minneapolis mayor, that Minnesota is very open. So if a person's living under the best circumstances as far as trans and LGBT acceptance in their state from their actual officials, then what would it be that maybe causes these things to happen? And when it comes to mental health, I think we should be free to be able to talk about the fact that there definitely is something happening with the trans community right now. And like I said in the beginning, I really do believe it has something to do with the fact that we are putting people on hormones that may not need to be on hormones. We're affirming genders that don't exist because This is what I'm tired of. And I once got in trouble for saying this exact thing. And it was years ago when everybody was still stuck on that. They're stunning and brave. It's so great for them. And I was like, no, this is not something that we just need to be willy-nilly affirming. And this is something that should still be a diagnosis. This is something that doctors should still be treating. This is something that even if we choose to fully accept people as however they want to identify or however they want to dress, because I'm getting more and more tired of the identify, to tell you the truth. And I'll give you an example right here really quick. This is what I want to tell you. Okay, so, and follow me for a second. NBC, Minneapolis shooting live updates. 2 children unalived, 17 victims injured in Minnesota Catholic school attack. And then what we need to know about the shooting. 2 children ages 8 and 10 have passed after a shooter opened fire during a morning mass at Annunciation Catholic School on the south side of Minneapolis. 17 other people, including 14 children, were injured. Okay, that's just basic facts right there. The shooter has been identified as Robin Westman, 23, who died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Still kind of factual, even though Robin Westman is not who did it. Robert Westman is who did it. I'm tired of them having to respect the way that people identify, even after they've done horrific things. And I'm sure that some of the trans activists are going to really try to drive home the fact that the chief of police was referring to Robin as him and he during the press conference.
What can be said about the shooter? We believe it is one suspect, a sole shooter. We believe he is deceased. He is in his early 20s.
That all needs to go out the window. And if you're a trans person or a trans activist, you need to let that go, because people are tired of having to play this game even after somebody has done something horrific. For a lot of people, it's an unacceptable game, even when the person has done absolutely nothing. I'm not one of these people, because for me, a person can identify however they want to identify or say whatever they want to say they are, as long as at their base, they accept their reality. What do I mean by that? There are people that we all may or may not know online, like Blair White, Buck Angel, that I guess you could say identify, even though I wouldn't put them in the identify category, because both of them fully acknowledge their biology. And so, to me, at that point, using pronouns which aren't forced on us by either of those two people, it's just what they would prefer, but they're not making a big deal of it if people don't refer to them that way. Like if you've ever seen when somebody refers to Buck Angel as she and her, Buck isn't making a big deal of that, because Buck knows that really he is a female that presents as male. But Buck is fully in touch with who he is, and that's something that we need to start really, really making sure that people understand before any kind of care, which debatable on care at this point, because I don't feel like any of what's being offered to what are considered trans people are valid and legitimate forms of therapy. And for me as a laid person, to be able to confidently say that from all the research that I've done and all the videos that I've done on trans, I think really says a lot about where some in the medical field are right now. Because I do think it's about them making money. I do think it's about some people just being radical as far as just accepting and affirming whatever people are and at face value. Because I'll be honest, up until about a month ago, I was very naive, and there aren't many things that I'm naive to at this advanced age. But when it came to what they call talk therapy for gender affirming care, I had assumed, because they're always saying, well, when it comes to gender affirming care for minors, they're doing talk therapy. That's all they're, and then I ended up finding out that what they're referring to as talk therapy is gender affirming talk therapy. So it's not trying to see if this person legitimately feels this way. It's not trying to see what may be the cause or causes that are making a person feel this way. Instead, it's just as soon as they say it, the therapist just goes ahead and affirms it and lets them know how right and how good they are for making this particular decision or for discovering this about themselves, which I don't think at all is the way that it should go down. I think it should be poked and prodded at a bit, and I don't mean that in any kind of antagonistic way. I don't mean it in any kind of conversion type of way, but yes, we should be making sure that there aren't underlying issues, which in a lot of cases there are going to be, that are making a particular person feel this way. And we should be looking into this, because if not, we end up with more situations like this. And I honestly do blame the Chicken Littles and the far leftist that have pushed these people to believe that there is a genocide happening, that people are trying to erase them completely. It's really none of that. And that's what I find the most frustrating about this whole situation, is I really feel like we as a society could head some of this off if we would actually have our medical professionals do their actual jobs and look into these things. And even if it's a therapist, a counselor, a psychiatrist, whatever it is that they're going to see, or whoever it is that they're going to see, really does need to examine what's going on with them mentally, rather than just jumping in and affirming them and putting them on hormones. And the thing that I was talking about that I got in trouble for a long time ago was I have had so much experience with trans people, and a few that were brand new in their transition. So just getting on the hormones, just really getting everything figured out. And what you end up finding out is that these people, because they're new to the hormones and they've now got them rushing through their bodies, it's a lot like, no matter what age they are when they go through it, dealing with teenagers of the gender that they're now going to assume. So if it's a trans man, so a person that is a female, starts taking testosterone, they start acting like teenage boys. And we all know what teenage boys are. They're aggressive, they're annoying, they're literally hopped up on hormones. That's what teenage boys are like. And with trans women, what I've been told and what I've seen, but what I've been told outright by my trans friends about when they're on their hormones, which a lot of people would refer to as moaning back in the day. That's when you pop your female hormones. And what I've been told by them is that it's a lot like what they hear pregnant women describing going through, because they're just having this overflow of estrogen. And so they'll cry at the drop of a hat. They're overly emotional. It's like women at their worst point.
Progesterone fucked me up. I couldn't.
I don't do progesterone.
It made me
either.
so sad.
Yeah.
And ladies, I'm not trying to be offensive, and I'm not trying, but I have sisters. So if anybody has seen the crazy that some of these things will induce, all the way down to like the pregnancy, like two of my sisters, we all lived together in the same house when they were pregnant with their kids and having to go through those emotions with them. And that's a lot of what my friends describe it as when it comes to those hormones. So when you're trying to deal with that, and this person, Robert, was actually 23 years old. So male peak hormones are between 18 and 25. So this person is still going through peak hormones as a male, and then introducing female hormones to that, and clearly not being monitored, because I feel like with the manifesto, if you heard anything about it, which we're not really going to get into the manifesto today, maybe I'll make another video about that. But if you read anything about the manifesto, it sounds like this person really believes that they're being some kind of hero to, I'm not sure exactly which community, because that's when things get completely crazy again. But just some of the wording they're using really does tell me that in their mind, they thought they were doing something that was very right. They thought that they were really standing up for some stuff. And the F Trump that they had written on one of their magazines that they used during the mass shooting, that too should tell you. And so when you have this person Oh, and what I wanted to get to really quick was this is where it gets ridiculous. FBI Director Kash Patel identified the shooter as male. Legal documents requesting a name change for Westman say that they identified as female. Well, who cares? What is accurate? Because if Kash Patel said this person is a male and they were born a male, it doesn't matter what you identify as, or what you say, or what you would like, even under the best circumstances. You are still a male. It doesn't matter what you do to yourself. That does not change. Even if you buy into the gender is a construct, so male and female are biological sex, man and woman are gender constructs. Let's say we completely buy into that. 100% lock, stock, and barrel buy into it. Even if you can change your gender, which is man or woman, you cannot change your sex. You still are biologically male or biologically female. That's just the way it works. And I'm tired of us not being able to talk about this, because I think that this is where, if you really dig into it, you'll find why people are having these glitches, why we're having these situations happen like this. And I think it is because a lot of these people, even when they really are gender dysphoric and it really is a big enough deal that they should do something about it, or doctors feel that they should do something about it, and I mean responsible ones, not these people running gender clinics that just want to make money. But even when that's really the case for them, and that's considered to be the best course of action by medical professionals, they still will have complications because they need that to be adjusted. It's like any other medication, if that's what we're going to look at it as. And I say this one from dealing with a friend of mine who was a trans man. This person, obviously female, had so many problems with testosterone and legit just crazy, to a point where I had to stop hanging out with them, and now I haven't talked to them to this day, because they were legitimately being stalker crazy with one of their exes. And I finally had to yell at them and just be like, this is not normal behavior. This is not the way a person's supposed to behave, male or female. I don't know what you're doing right now, but it's not what you're supposed to be doing. That I'll 100% tell you. And I think that if more of us were allowed to say that to people, no matter what they were or how they identified, we'd be in a much better place. I'll give you another example. I have a friend who's bipolar. I absolutely love my friend who's bipolar. I would use her name, but I'm not going to, because even though she's open about it, I don't want to put anything out there like that. But what I will tell you is that my friend will every once in a while have episodes, and that's because either the meds don't get adjusted right, or sometimes your prescription basically changes, or you'll just have a situation where sometimes people feel after they've been taking their meds for a while that now they're healed and they stop taking their meds. Either way, every once in a while, my friend has an episode and has to go away for a minute. So this happened not too long ago, and they're so comfortable with that just being their reality, that they are bipolar and every once in a while something's gonna snag a little bit, that they told me that they ended up having to get locked up. As they put it, they went to the crazy hospital for a little while. And I was like, well, how did that happen? Did you call or did somebody else call? And they said their roommate called. And because I have very honest relationships with my friends, I asked my friend, I was like, so were you mad at her for calling? And then she was like, no, I was acting crazy. And it really made me laugh, but it also made me very proud of her. And it also made me very happy that she feels comfortable enough to be that open with me or anybody else that's in her life that's going to be an actual part of her life. Because in order for these relationships to work, it does take being completely honest. And if this person that identifies as a woman, but is definitely male, Robert Westman, had maybe had friends that they had honest relationships with, and maybe didn't have to go along with this TikTok version of trans where everything just has to be affirmed and yas queened until the person does something so crazy that everybody has to agree that it's crossed the line, then maybe we could actually head some of these things off, because instead of us pretending it's normal, they would be at a point where they know it's not, and then we could all work from there and be much better allies to these people than we're being when we just condone and affirm everything that they're going through and everything that they think, because we're told that this is the most vulnerable. You want to know who's the most vulnerable? The people that got unalived are the most vulnerable. I believe they were 6 and 8 years old. Those are our most vulnerable. So we also need to stop with that language when it comes to trans people and stop infantilizing people that in a lot of cases are adults. I still hear people talking about this person, Robert Westman, like they're an actual child. I still hear people being like, well, I think the parents should have done this, and I think somebody should call CPS, Child Protective Services, for a 23-year-old. I don't think they're going to take the call. I think that's where we as a society need to do better if we're going to claim to accept these things. Because while I 100% accept my friend that is bipolar, I have another friend who's schizophrenic. My friend that's schizophrenic used to tell me some of the worst thoughts that he would have. And he would tell me in a way like he was venting. I don't know why everybody's so open with me and their mental health, but I welcome it. But he would tell me things that were just like, yeah, that's crazy. And I laugh because I am proud of these relationships, and I am happy that people are this open with me, because if somebody's open with you, even if they don't need to hear it in some cases, I think it does help them to hear it, if you know what I mean. Because even if I'll be completely accepting of you and understanding that these are thoughts that you have, just to make sure that we're on the same page, I would be like, that's not a thought you act on, right? And he was so sweet. He'd just be like, yes, Ty, I know I'm not supposed to. I know I don't want to act on any of this, but this is just some of the thoughts I was having the other day. And I really feel like that's where we need to get to in mental health, or with mental health in this country. And that's when it comes to all things. Gender dysphoria was in the DSM as a mental illness for a long time, and for good reason. And so if people are going through these bouts where they're psychotic, because to me, there's nothing wrong with a person presenting however they want to present, because presenting is just a fancy way of saying dress and look like. That's what presenting is. Like right now, I am presenting as a male. Right now, I think I'm presenting as a younger male than I am. But good example. It would be crazy for me to think I'm as young as I'm dressed right now. I am still my age, and I'm under no misgivings about that. And same with trans people. It really does have to get to a point where we know you're male, you know you're male, we know you'll never be a woman, you know you'll never be a woman, you feel better dressed and looking like a woman, and I'm completely fine with that. You are completely in touch with the fact that you are male, you just prefer that people refer to you as she and her. Again, I have no problem with that, as long as you're completely based in reality and understand. Because to me, that's almost as simple as a person that's name is Michael, but really prefers Mike. Never liked being referred to as Michael. We all know people like this. It's not a big deal. And if we're friends with them, we're usually like, yeah. But if somebody for legal purposes has to call them by their legal name, so Michael, they don't flip out about it. They don't go into a depression over it. They don't go into a tailspin over it. Because one of the biggest problems with these people, and what's really making people flip out, and I'm not saying that this is the case with this Robert Westman, but I am saying that this might be a lot of what's leading people down these really destructive paths, is that they haven't owned what they are, even though that's what they're telling people. So they go on these misguided missions where they in some cases do terrible things because they're looking for somebody to take out the fact that they don't accept themselves on. That's what it's really about. And this is where I'll use myself as an example, and then we'll wrap this up and be done with it. Before I came out of the closet, when people would tell me I was gay or call me gay, because that's just what young guys do to each other, especially if some are more animated and a tad on the effeminate side, because like I've told you before, at a point in my life, I learned how to mask a lot of the effeminate. Now I just don't care, so I just am what I am. But there was a point where I was kind of living under a little bit of a guise, where I was trying to appear, I'm trying to present as straight. But I laugh because it's so far from the way I think now. I'm just me. I don't give any thought to like presenting a particular way. But during that time, sometimes my straight friends, because I was straight too at the time, would call me gay or call me the F slur that rhymes with bag for gay man. Also could be a British cigarette. But sometimes they would call me that, and I would be devastated. Nothing would hurt worse than being called either of those things. And it was an actual case of the saying, the truth hurts, really coming to life, because nothing hurt worse than hearing the truth that I myself wasn't ready to accept about myself. And it would send me into an actual depression. I remember there are times when I was hanging out with my friends and, you know, it wasn't homophobic because they didn't really think that about me. They just would say it like they would say it to any other guy. I know that in these politically correct days, maybe less people say it like that. But when I was younger, I'm Gen X, and when I was younger, those were just regular things straight guys would say to each other, and nobody thought anything of it. So a straight guy calling another straight guy the F slur or gay, the other one's just gonna laugh it off, maybe tell them they're stupid, because the straight guy isn't at all worried about that word because it's just not what they are. So they're like, don't care, call me that if you want to, but it's just stupid and it's not what I am. Where a person like me would be rocked to my core because it was the actual truth. So when this mayor, Jacob Frey, is trying to say that there is hate being directed at the trans community, I really don't think that's what's going on. I think people are just being very honest when it comes to the way that that's all working out and the way that's playing out. And I think that because certain people like a Tim Walz, like a Jacob Frey, don't know how they're going to navigate this when they've gone with that narrative that people are what they say they are. I think that that's why they have to shift it to being hate, because to them, truth has to be hate, or else they're just going to have to actually own it themselves and be like, facts are facts. This is what it is. And yeah, we're going to say that because that's just the truth, and that's the most honest place to work from, the healthiest place to work from, and the most productive place to work from. So that's where I'm at on that particular part of it. Maybe I'll make a video about the manifesto and more of the facts, but this one is just basically the dynamics and why I think everything's going so haywire and what I think we need to do to correct course. So let me know what you think down below in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. If you want to see a video of me talking about the fatties losing it over Southwest Airlines' new policy, click the video on your screen. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.